Hello and welcome to another Stamp with Amy K Facebook Live. And today I'm going to show you really quickly how I made a card with the Wishes and Wonder stamp set bundle. And I also used the Cherish the Season stamp set bundle, which are two that are in our August to December mini catalog, which I guess, like I said, I keep thinking it's a new catalog, but you know, really it's it's not as new and exciting anymore. Well, it's still exciting, but still not brand new. So I am apparently having some trouble here, just trying to pull up the video, make sure I can see y'all. So if you are hopping in, please feel free to say hello and let me know that you're here. There it is. Okay. And I'm always happy to answer questions and whatever during the video, so feel free to chatter away and let me know what you have for questions. So hey, Karen and Rosie and Debbie and Catherine, thanks so much for hopping in, and Patricia is here as well, I see. So thanks again for joining me today. So this is the card we're going to be making. It's pretty simple. It's maybe a little more, I don't know, collage-y than what I normally do. Is collage-y a word? I'm making it a word. Hi, Julie and Roz and Bree. I'm glad everybody's here. Thanks again for joining today, and Barbara as well. So this actually uses most of the suite, the Cherish the Season suite I used on it. And a few other things. But so the Wishes and Wonder stamp set, I'll start with that one. This is the stamp set. It's a red rubber stamp set. Lots of good images, good sentiments. It has coordinating dies, which you know that I love. And these are the North Pole Wishes dies. I love that it's got a tag die in it, which is awesome. So always a good thing to have. And then, a couple of kind of just greenery type images. It's got some round tags in it. It's got a couple of different deer. This one actually die cuts the stamped deer, and then this one die cuts just a deer and embosses it as well. And then this die actually cuts out the mistletoe, which hopefully I've got the word right, mistletoe. I think I do. Hey, Linda, thanks for joining. And so that's glad that you're here as well. So, okay, so this is one of the sets that we're going to be using. The other one that we're going to be using is the Cherish the Season bundle, and this one again is in that same suite of products, in the Wonder of the Season products, or Season product suite is what I'm trying to say. I used the sentiments out of this one, which again, you can kind of mix and match between the two. They're a similar theme, but not exactly the same, which is nice. This one's got some really good dies in it, some that cut out the stamped images, and then the little jingle bells here. And just so you know I said this in one of my earlier videos, but it took me a long time, and my daughter finally pointed out to me that these lines in here actually fit right here in each of the die cut jingle bells. So if you cut the jingle bell out, you can cut a layering piece and put it right here where the little kind of indent is on each of the dies, and actually that one too. So just so you know that's something that it took me a while to figure out. And anyway, hopefully that was one little helpful tip. We're using this set of dies, which these are the Sounds of the Season dies. And again, these are bundled together with the stamp set for a 10% discount on that if you order it together. And then the other die set that we're using, of course, is my stitched rectangles. One of these days, they're just not going to cut anymore because I use them all the time. So definitely going to be using that one. Hey, Arlene and Pam, glad you're here. So thanks so much for joining today. Before we get going on the card, I did want to remind you of two things. First one is the Designer Series paper sale is almost over, and this Designer Series paper that I used in here is the 'Tis the Season Designer Series paper, and it's one of them that's on sale for 15% off during the month of October. So if you have not gotten yours yet and stocked up, make sure that you're doing that, because it's an awesome paper sale, and I love that it's got papers from both the annual catalog and the holiday catalog, which sometimes we don't always get, holiday things being on sale, and so I love that they are a little ahead of time. So 15% off 15 select Designer Series paper packs. So the details are posted out on my blog. So if you have questions, feel free to hop out there at stampwithamyk.com. And so again, the details are posted out there. Go take a peek and let me know if you have questions on that. Again, that ends on Saturday, October 31st. So make sure that you're getting your orders put in. And then starting in November, on November 3rd, Stampin' Up! Has a new bundle and some new coordinating products that are going to be for sale as well. So these are, again, starting on November 3rd. This is called Curvy Celebrations. And it includes, there's a quite curvy stamp set in the curvy dies. And these are some really good ones. And these are bundled together. together. So you can get the stamp set and dies together. And then they have some coordinating Christmas products that will only be available from November 3rd to January 4th. And that is the Curvy Christmas stamp set and the Classic Christmas Designer Series paper, and it's 6x6 designer paper. And then they have it listed, which is really cool. They don't usually do a whole entire kind of suite of products bundled at 10% off, but they are for this particular promotion. So you can get the Quite Curvy stamp set, Curvy dies, Curvy Christmas stamp set, and the Classic Christmas 6x6 designer series paper all in one big bundle, and it will be 10% off the entire bundle price. So just so you know that, wanted you to know that that is coming on November 3rd, and keep an eye out because I'm going to have a little something special related to that posting out on my blog soon. All right, let's get going on the card. I've done a bunch of pre-cutting ahead of time so that you didn't have to watch me do all of that part of it. Again, this is the 'Tis the Season Designer Series paper. This is cut to 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, and I'm going to adhere it to a piece of cherry cobbler cardstock, which is cut to 4 by 5 1/4. And I will be posting all the details and all the cardstock cuts and everything out on my blog tomorrow, so make sure you take a peek out there. So again, no worries about writing everything down and keeping track of the measurements because it'll all be posted tomorrow. And I will also share the blog post in this video, a link to it in the comments on this video so that you will be able to find it starting tomorrow out there on my blog. So I have another piece of the 'Tis the Season Designer Series paper, and this piece is cut to 2 by 3 7/8. And then I'm going to adhere it to a piece of cherry cobbler cardstock that is cut to 2 1/8 by 3 7/8. And you will notice that I am using a little different pattern on this card just to give it a little different look. On the original card, I'd use the plaid, and this is one of the striped patterns in it. But I thought, I think either one would work equally as well, and so that's why I kind of went with using something that's a little bit different on it, just to show you what some of the different papers look like. All right, and I'm going to adhere this to the card front, again with Stampin' Seal. Next up, I'm actually going to stamp the sentiment. Actually, you know what? I'll adhere it on the card front. There's no reason I can't do that now. So I'm going to go ahead. This is a cherry cobbler card base, and I've got it cut to 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 and scored at 4 1/4. And I'm just going to take some of my chopped in half Stampin' dimensionals and adhere it to the card front. So, looking back, and yeah, Catherine didn't know what the little lines on the bells were. Yes, like, so I was kind of embarrassed when my daughter pointed out. She's like, "Mom, they're they're the middle for the bells," and I'm like, "Oh, you're right, they are." But to me, it wasn't obvious when I looked at it in the catalog what those were for, and it took me a long time to figure it out. So, anyway, but I was glad she pointed it out to me because then I didn't feel quite so silly. Thankfully, figured it out fairly early on in the catalog. So, all right, next up, we're going to do a little stamping with the sentiment, and I've just got a piece of Whisper White cardstock here and Versamark ink, and we're going to do some heat embossing with gold Stampin' Emboss powder. So first thing to do is just ink up the sentiment with Versamark really well and stamp it straight down and then straight back up. And I'll set that aside and close it up because I know that I will spill if I do not. And then I've got my gold embossing powder, and I know this is going to get really close to the screen, and I apologize. But I keep my embossing powders in little Ziploc containers so that I can hopefully contain most of the mess, unless I completely dump them over like I have done before. I had a black embossing powder once that I dumped the entire thing, and it's a mess. And it gets everywhere. It's as bad or worse than glitter. All right, so I'm going to do some heat embossing. Just going to pull in the heat tool here and turn it on the level 2 setting. The Stampin' Up! Heat tool has 2 settings. Level 1 is for drying ink, so if you're doing something like watercoloring or using an ink that just takes a little bit longer to dry, you can use the level 1 setting, and then level 2 is for heat embossing. So that's what you want to do if you're using the embossing powders. And then we're just going to heat the image until, there we go, it starts to turn kind of the shiny look. And I'll try not to burn my fingers. All right. So that looks good. All right, so I'm going to give it a second here just to let it dry, make sure that it's cool enough. If you touch it immediately after finishing up your heat embossing, you will end up with a smudgy mess, and that's not what you want. You want it to be pretty, so don't do that. Next up, I'm going to grab one of the stitched rectangle dies, and it is the second smallest one from the narrow section of the dies, if that makes sense. I call these wide and these narrow. I don't know if that's truly what I'm supposed to call them, but that's how I keep track of them. And I'm just going to run this through my die cutting machine. So my die cutting machine is set up off to my right side here, so I'm just going to do some quick cutting. Hopefully y'all are having a great Tuesday. It definitely cooled off here this weekend, and there is some discussion that there may potentially be a little snow on the ground here on Friday, which will be interesting. I don't think it's going to stick around kind of snow because it's supposed to warm up again a little bit over the weekend, but right now they're saying rain, and it's supposed to be like 26 degrees, which rain and 26 degrees to me usually means snow, but maybe it's different. I don't know. So, all right, so we've got our sentiment heat embossed and die cut with one of the stitched rectangles dies, and we're just going to use a little Stampin' seal to adhere it to the card front. And there's no like specific placement that I put it. I just wanted it kind of scooted closer to the left-hand side and down towards the bottom because I knew I was going to be adding my, the deer image and everything up here. So, never know what to call the rectangles. Okay, I'm glad that it makes sense to you because that's what I call them. And I always wonder if people go, what is she talking about? So, all right, next up, I've got one of the gold hoops embellishments, which these are really cool. And I see that I only have 2 left, so I really need to get another pack of these ordered soon before I run out. They work great for these collage type things, and you can just use glue dots to adhere them down, which is really handy. Just be careful where you place your glue dots. So that's the only thing you need to be sort of aware of when you are adhering these down, is just making sure that you've got glue dots that are put in a spot where you know you're going to have it covered by another image. You could maybe use liquid glue to glue it down, but I think that might be kind of messy, and I'm not a fan of messy when it comes to glues, so I'd rather use the glue dots and then just stick something over the top of it so you can't see it anymore. That usually works pretty well for me. So, all right, next up, I have done some die cutting ahead of time as well. We have got, this was cut with one of the North Pole Wonder dies, so it was cut, hold on a second, let me pull out the die set. Cut with one of the circle dies, so I cut it with this one. And it does have a hole poked in it, but you're not going to see the hole because I'm going to cover it up with the deer when I stick it down. And oh, they're predicting snow for upstate New York too. Eek. Eek. Definitely chilly. And then I did a little bit of die cutting here from brushed metallic cardstock. This is kind of that middle, the gold tone for the brushed metallic cardstock that I cut with these 2 dies as well. And then I cut a couple of the little pine boughs, and this is the Sounds of the Season dies. So I cut a couple of the pine boughs from Shaded Spruce cardstock with that. And what I'm going to start with is I'm going to actually adhere my circle on first, and that will kind of help guide me as to where it is that I want to put the pine boughs and that sort of thing, and kind of tuck them around the deer image. So I'm going to put the circle down first, and I'm going to use some Stampin' Dimensionals to do that. I agree, Karen, it's way too early for snow. we can't have it before the end of October. Eek, that's too early. So hopefully it'll stay away. So, all right. So I'm going to take this, and again, be careful of where I place the hole. I know that the deer's head or body is going to be covering it in that area. So that is sort of why I'm placing it up where I am. At least it should be covering it once I get everything done. Hopefully I put everything in the right place. But you never know with me. Sometimes I don't always do it in the right spot, and then kind of try to tug things around later. Sometimes it works. Sometimes we just start over. So, all right, I'm going to use some glue dots to adhere down a couple of the little branches here that I had die cut earlier. And again, I'm just tucking them up and under where I've got the circle at, so I know that they'll be covered. So if the glue dot is accidentally peeking out a little bit, it'll definitely be covered. So you need to order some more of the hoops. Yes, they are really nice, and they do make pretty cards. I mean, it was one of those things, and I should I don't know if I should tell you this, honestly. When I first looked at them in the catalog, I'm like, what in the world would you do with those? And then I got them and figured out how cool they are. And now I've been using them on everything. So, and while I was talking, I don't know if you saw what I did. I snipped off the end of the little branch die cut that I did here, just because it was a little bit long to try to tuck it underneath the circle where I wanted it to be. And I'm going to go and adhere a couple more die cuts on up here. So, and yeah, I missed Rosie's comment. She must have been talking about, I know that you guys have had snow up there in South Dakota, so you can keep it. Most definitely you can keep it. We don't want it down here, or out, well, I shouldn't say down here, out here. It's too early for that kind of craziness. We have to at least get through Halloween. It's no fun having the kids, dressed up in their costumes and, having to put on their big, thick winter jackets. I remember having to do that as a kid, and I was always so sad. I'm just like, but I've got my cute costume on, and yeah, and then it's all covered with your big, fat winter coat, and nobody can see it anyway. So it's always a little sad when that happens. All right, now I'm just tucking the branch die cuts on the other side of my collage here that I'm making. Just kind of tucking them around underneath and under and over and, all that sort of thing. So doing some under the, this one I kind of tucked more under the hoop, and these are going to go over the hoop, and going to adhere down my brushed gold die cut. Oh, you didn't order from the catalog initially because you looked at them too and said the same thing, Karen? Like I said, when I looked at them early, I'm just like, I don't know what I'll do with those. And then I got my, grubby little hands on them, and now I'm like, ooh, I love these, and I need to order more. So they're just such a nice little accent, and they're flatter than I originally thought they were going to be. I thought that was going to be the issue with them, is that they were going to be too thick. But they're really about the thickness of a dimensional, so they go, it's really easy to stick them on anything that you want to add them to for a little bit of extra pretty and a little extra sparkle on it. So, all right, next up I have got the deer that I pre-stamped from the Wishes and Wonders stamp set. And I stamped it in Sahara Sand ink on Whisper White cardstock, and just did the die cutting with your North Pole Wonder die that coordinates with it. And then I've got the light crumb cake Stampin' Blends marker. Hey, Jackie, I'm glad you're joining today, so thanks for hopping in. And I'm going to color the deer. I'm not doing any fancy shading on this. And in a second, I'm actually going to take the color lifter and remove some of the color from it because it got a little darker than what I wanted it to be. Even with the light crumb cake, I sort of wanted him to show, but didn't really want him to be like, oh my goodness, there's the deer. So I did a little color lifting to kind of lighten him. I think it's a him. I assume it's a him. I think it is once they get the antlers like that. I am not a deer, I don't know enough about the critters. I just know that it's pretty and it's easy to color. So I'm going with him because I think that's, like I said, I think that's what they have when they have the big antlers. I think it's a him and not a her. All right. And then I've got the ivory Stampin' Blends actually that I'm using to color in the antlers. It's a slightly different color. It's still kind of in that same neutrals family, but a little different color for the antlers and the hooves. And it almost sort of looked like I was painting his nails when I was doing the hooves. So I thought, I probably shouldn't have done them in the sort of pinky color, but I did. Definitely him, he has antlers. Okay, I thought so, but then I had a moment of, I'm not sure. So, all right, I'm just gonna take the color lifter, and when I use the color lifter, I tend to use the more narrow end of it because I just feel like I have a little better control over where exactly it's gonna land. And I'm just going to do a little lifting of the color on the face, a little bit on the neck, on the little tummy, the belly, whatever you want to call it, and then a little bit down the legs just to kind of try to blend the color together a little bit and lighten it. And that was really what I wanted. It was mostly just the lightening of the image. And it does take a second once you color with these. It'll start to lift it initially, and then it does kind of the full lightening of it after just a second or two after it dries. So, and it's always easier. You can always come back in and lift a little more color if you want more color removed. You can always add it back in as well if you want to decide that you want it to be a little bit darker. You can color right back over it again as well. So the color lifter is one of my favorite things, and definitely something that you need if you're going to use the Stampin' Blends markers. So, all right, so I've got my little deer here all colored, and I'm going to use a little Stampin' Seal to adhere him to the tag. And again, I'm just going to be careful and make sure that I'm not covering up my sentiment, but I do have the little hole covered in the tag, and adhere it down like that. And then I've got a couple of, just realized you need more of the hoops too. Yes, they're good. It's really, really good. So, and I'm going to adhere a couple of the little gold glitter enamel dots, and I just sort of tucked them around the collage that I was making just to give it a little extra sparkle, even though it's a him deer. I'm still, he still needs to have a little sparkle around him for Christmas. At least that's what I thought. So, all right, so just going to add a couple of those in, and we are all done with the outside of the card. So pretty simple. On the inside of the card, I also kept it fairly simple. Again, Whisper White cardstock, and it is cut to 4 by 5 1/4. And I have Cherry Cobbler cardstock, Cherry Cobbler ink, and I'm going to be stamping the sentiment from the Cherish the Season stamp set. Inking it up again in Cherry Cobbler, and hoping to get it somewhat straight. Again, it's always a little challenging with the camera between me and what I'm stamping, but hopefully I did it reasonably straight. And if not, that's the easy thing to fix on the inside. So, all right, and then I've got the little deer image again from the Wishes and Wonder stamp set, and I've got Sahara Sand ink, and gonna ink that up, and then just stamp it here next to my sentiment. So he looks like he's sort of reading the sentiment, maybe, I don't know. All right. Where did oh, here it is. I was gonna say, where did I put my adhesive? I know I just had it in my hand. Got a little Stampin' Seal, and I'm going to be using that to adhere this to the inside of the card base. And we'll be all done with our card for today. All right, and there we go. Going to grab the bone folder and do a quick crease along the score line here, and that is all for my card today. So again, very, very similar cards, almost exactly the same. The only thing I switched up was the little bit of the designer series paper, just to give it a little different look. So it looks like the deer that you see in your backyard. So awesome. We get a few of them, quite a few of them around here too. I haven't seen any that have been quite that big, but we do get quite a few deer around here as well. So thanks so much for joining today. I appreciate y'all being here, and I will plan to see you, hopefully, if YouTube is all good, hopefully I'll be live out on YouTube on Friday around 2 o'clock Eastern time, and then I will be back here next week, Tuesday around 2 o'clock Eastern time with another project to share. So thanks again for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. Have a great week, and we will see you all soon.